And let's start again. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the General Services Committee of the 6th of July 2020. I will endeavour to remember to use my mic as and when. I'm going to ask members to do the same. As you can see, it now focuses on where we're sitting. So move on to item 1, apologies for absence. We'll see no apologies for absence. Item 2, minutes, which can be found on pages 5 to 8. Are there any corrections or anything to the minutes from the previous meeting? I'm seeing none. So are they formally approved? Yep. Excellent, thank you. Item 3, items of urgent business. I've not received any additional items of urgent business for this evening's meeting. Moving on to item 4, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declaration of interest in relation to the items to be discussed this evening? None? In that case, we will move on to item 5, which can be found at pages 9 to 14, which is the independent remuneration panel options, which is Matt. Matt, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. I'll be brief. At January 2020 full council, the council made a decision for an options report on the future of our IRP, our independent remuneration panel. There's a requirement for the council to have an IRP, and we have a long-standing shared arrangement with Southend Council. You can see under 2.4 what the regulations require that IRP to cover and do, and then in section 3.1 are set out the three main options open to the committee to decide how you wish to proceed with IRP arrangements in the future. And that's it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that, Matt. Does any member have any questions before we look at the and agree a specific option? Yeah, Councillor.
Okay. The only thing I was thinking about this is, as we're working as part of the Constitution Working Group and the Scrutiny Panel, and possibly, you know, lots of committees are going to change, and the work of members on the committee could well change considerably. I didn't know whether that would impact the interviews that take part as part of the remuneration panel, because you'll be interviewed for one thing, but at the end of it, your whole role could be something completely different before a decision's made.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons moving forward was to align to make it more independent for us as we change and move forward. Obviously, you know, I truly cannot talk with any certainty on this, but I don't know, for instance, if in Southend the number of people who live in Southend and work in Southend is greater or less than us. You would imagine it being so much further away from London that you're more likely to have that, but I truly don't know. So there would be that basic inconsistency there. They do things different to us. There are fewer scrutiny committees, for instance, and they believe that they have more licensing applications, so it fluctuates up and down. So certainly putting one that's more local would also mean if we suddenly change it in 4 years' time, just for argument's sake, the Constitution completely, before we change any remuneration, we'd have to go back to the remuneration panel anyway. So we'd be doing that easier, I believe, if we went independent on that one. Councillor Kent.
So for me, we're asked two questions. One is, do we want to keep to the 4-year cycle, which would see a remuneration panel next year, which would take into consideration any changes that we make. So for me, yes, we want to keep to the 4 years. And I agree with Rob. I think that a locally based panel that looks specifically at Thurrock and Thurrock's needs will be better for us. I know there's a cost associated with it, but the difference looks to be about £2,000. So I would move the third option if we could perhaps cut the debate short.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't actually, the 4-yearly part, I just assumed that everyone would, I can't see a reason to change it from a 4-yearly, either this time or any time else. There'd be meetings all the time for a no change outcome, which would be that would be a waste of money. So to move this on, unless anyone else has got anything else to say, it would have been my on recommendation 1.1 to agree the future operation of independent remuneration panels based on the three options. 3.1 is to go for the option 3.5, establish a new panel solely for Thurrock. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
And to maintain the 4-yearly cycle for the IRP. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Excellent. So with that, I move on to item 6, which can be found at pages 15 to 24. Councillor Coxhill.
Thank you very much. This is, and then I think you see on Teams today, we have someone who's well known to us all. So really, instead of me asking me questions and that, I'd like to introduce the Director of TRL, Roger Harris, to say a few words about this report.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader, I think it is now, isn't it? Congratulations. I'm actually the chair as well as the director of TRL board, and have been now for since February 2021, so just over 18 months. I'm very pleased to present this report tonight. We agreed that TRL would present a progress report every 6 months, so that the General Services Committee, as the shareholder, ultimately the shareholder of TRL, was kept regularly up to date on the progress of TRL. I'm pleased to say now we are actually in a better position in terms of our wider governance, and now have appointed 2 additional directors in November, December last year, both of whom have got extensive experience in terms of housing development, worked in local authorities, and have brought, I think, a high degree of both private and public sector housing experience to the board. So the board feels, in terms of its wider governance, in a much stronger position. We still have 2 vacancies on the board. We are going to be going out to recruitment fairly soon. And I'm very keen that we extend the local representation on the board and look at sort of wider issues around diversity as well. So we've got 2 vacancies on the board, and we're going to go out to recruitment fairly soon to address that. TRL, as people will know, has currently 1 scheme in operation at St Chad's and has been for some years now. And I think it's been fair to say, and it's quite widely known, that TRL had a bit of difficulty in terms of the number of its directors resigning, but members agreed some time back that the board of directors would be fully independent of the council. And I think that is going to put us in a much stronger position. We are now, as members will know, own Belmont Road. Again, there were some issues that didn't allow us to progress that as fast as we wish. And we're now going through the process of resubmitting the planning application for Belmont Road. And I think a lot was learnt in terms of how we consult with and work more closely with the community as part of that development in Belmont Road. Cabinet has also agreed that Culver Centre should be a TRL scheme. And I'm pleased to say that already has planning permission, and we have the design team in place, and we've got a timetable in the report for both Belmont Road and Culver Centre. So I'm very keen that the TRL is seen as a very close partner for Thurrock. I think it is part of the range of options that you have in terms of housing development going forward. I think now we're in a much better place in terms of stronger governance. I think we are becoming, although we remain a strong partner with Thurrock, and obviously Thurrock remains ultimately the shareholder, and we are also now becoming more independent as an organisation with a much more stronger independent board and our own separate financial advice and legal advice. So I didn't want to say too much, Chair, tonight, because I think it's all pretty well covered. And any difficult questions I'll be passing over to Helen anyway. So that's just a bit of a quick canter through, and to say that very much welcome reports. But I do think TRL is a very strong position, and we look forward to working with the council over the next few years.
Thank you for that, Roger. I'm going to pass this out to members for questions. Any questions, members? Councillor Massey?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Roger, and good evening, Helen. The remaining directors, when you said we're going out to recruitment soon, what sort of timescales are we talking on those?
So I'm hoping within the next few months, Councillor Massey. As I say, we've got now we've addressed, I think, some of the skills gaps in terms of having a broader depth of knowledge around housing development and housing management. But I'm very keen that we address the fact that we need a stronger local community presence on TRL. So that's my number one priority. So I'm hoping we'll get it most probably once we've got the sort of summer break out of the way. So I'm hoping that we will be able to start that in September and go out to recruitment in September.
Thank you for that. Further questions? Councillor Kent.
Lots to welcome here, particularly glad to see that we've got 2 of the new directors. So we're up to, 4 directors in total. Look forward to appointing the others in due course. Would much rather wait, take our time and get the right people than rush. Useful to see the update on St Chad's, but the one that interests me really is Belmont Road, because we know the way the approach on trying to develop Belmont Road previously was a disaster that caused huge problems locally. And I just want to get some confidence that with the same amount of housing in the same area, the same place, what's going to be different this time? Glad to see that there's some community consultation built in there. Can you just give me some indication of who's going to be carrying out that community consultation? Is that going to be TRL? Is that going to be the council? Is that going to be an independent company that's contracted by one or other of those? And tell me what's going to be different this time. How is this going to be acceptable for the people who live around Belmont Road?
Roger or Helen?
Yeah, I'll kick off, and Helen may want to then contribute. Councillor Kent, I think you're right. I think we've learnt a lot from the previous experience. It's not going to be an easy site to develop. I mean, I've visited it on many occasions, and I know that the 4 access routes are quite narrow. However, I think there is a lot that we can learn from last time in terms of the siting of the compound, being very clear around the access to the school, some of the conditions around planning permission in terms of the access routes. It is actually quite a large site in itself, the actual Belmont Road, the piece of land. So I don't have any issues about the site, but I'm well aware of the concerns that residents had, particularly during the building stages of that site, and access and lorries going up and down the road. So I think we may not be able to ever please everyone. I'm not that naive, but I do think a lot was learned from the previous experience. It is owned by TRL. It will be a TRL development, so we're hoping to appoint an independent company to conduct some of that consultation so that they can get a genuine voice of local people. So I don't know, hope that gives you some reassurance, Councillor Kent, that we have learnt some of the lessons from last time.
I would also like to add that one of the items on the next board agenda is actually the consultation for Belmont Road, and that should be coming to the board to have a look at and to decide the best routes going forward, but it will be done independently through a third party.
Thank you. Councillor Koch, before bringing...
Yeah, if I can answer from the council thing, I think it's wholly independent. It's owned by them, and TRL should bring forward a plan application the right way to show, and then we can keep our own recourse to independence and that, and say what we think of that. I live very close to it. There's no doubt. I know last time I approve of some bringing housing forward, and I think it's a housing site. I think the consultation and how that's done is critical. There's good consultations and there's bad consultations, as we've seen. And the council is sometimes bad for doing always bad consultations. I think there's a good engagement and good companies out there that hopefully you will pick a reputable company that can deliver and listen to the consultation. And actually, before we get to a plan application, good plan applications is what we need, and good housing content numbers, but in a sympathetic way to the neighbours. And I think that's a way what I'd like to see. And I'm glad that I was very nervous about the timescales because it was too long and it's taking too long. And once to start producing houses from TRL, but I think this consultation and the programme you've given, if you can stick to that, I think we can actually make sure there's no delay. There's plenty of time in that for consultations before a planning application, and so residents can have a view of that to make sure that access during this construction period and after, because mainly the construction period, is the right way to deliver that site instead of landlocking a site.
Thank you. Did you... sorry, Councillor Hewley. Question?
John's.
Oh, sorry, was you done, John? Apologies.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting the consultation up front is good, and I welcome that. I think Councillor Coxall's right to remind us that the kind of split with independent company putting forward a planning application as any other developer would gives us, and will give the planning committee the ability to kind of be truly independent and say, we know what the problems were last time, you're not doing enough to make sure that we don't end up in the same position and therefore be in a stronger position to refuse it. Because I have to say, I hear the words, we've learned lessons from last time. When you ask what the lessons are learned, it's actually, there are no lessons learned. Siting of the compound, problems with the school, problems that happen day in, day out there. Anyway, narrow access routes. So what? You know, so what is going to be different this time? Don't see it. I don't have any confidence in it yet.
Councillor Cox, I'll come back, but Councillor Hewley has had a hand up for a while.
I take your sort of clear this point. I take your point now, and I think there is there. I think I'm not finding their name, but we're all aware of the issues of access around that road and how we do that, and then that I hope in a sympathetic way comes forward, because I will be putting my phone into the consultation. I live locally to it and next door to it, and making sure that, and I think the lesson learned is independence, so it's making, that's just like you said, and making sure we can deal with this in a sympathetic way before it comes to planning. I think it's right that TRL, and I supported their decision not to come back and ask to just reappoint this thing, and I think that shows that we're listening, that it can come back for a full plan application starting from scratch, and that hopefully make a difference. But I'm looking forward to seeing the consultation and being engaged in it before a plan application.
Thanks for that, Councillor Hewley.
Thank you. Roger, it's good to see you looking so well before I go. With the 128 properties already sold or rented out, I just wondered if you could tell me a bit about what TRHL are doing, because they're the sales management team and there isn't anything at the moment to sell, so I just wonder what they were doing.
Okay. So there are technically two companies, Councillor Hewlin. TRL is like the parent company in the development arm, and Homes is like the housing management arm, and they oversee the housing management side of it. So at the moment, the only scheme is the St Chad's one, which has been up and running for some years now, and TRL oversees the rented properties on the St Chad's site. Obviously, part of the original plan, and this is what we're reviewing, we've got another away day coming out fairly soon, was that over the course of the next 5 years, those will be disposed of as well into the private sector, and that's part of the original business plan and how TRL was structured in the first place. But TRHL is very much the housing management arm of TRL, and manages the properties on behalf of the development company, which is TRL. So I don't know if I've answered your question fully, Councillor Hewlin. It's difficult on Teams to see what the look on people's faces as to whether they're happy with your answers or not. So I'll wait to see if I get a second question.
Yeah, second question. Sorry, Roger. The management team, though, that's looks like that's being seconded out to HERA by TRHL. So I just wondered what TRHL were actually doing at the moment. If you've got a management team under them managing it and you haven't got anything to sell, I just wondered what they were up to.
So the employed staff of TRL and TRHL is very thin. There, in fact, is only one employed member of staff, and that is Helen, who's on the call today. All the other staff are staff who work for the council. So TRHL is literally just the company. It has no other staff apart from Helen, and we contract out, if you like, the collection of the rent, any issues around ASB or anything issues around tenancy management is contracted out. So THRL is purely the company, and the board members of TRL are the same board members of TRHL. I don't know, Helen, if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, I guess really, as Roger said, TRL is really your strategic arm, looking at development, and THRL is your operational arm. We couldn't. The second company, TRHL, was set up. It's kind of known as Homes because it's just easier to say. It was set up in the first place because when we finished St Chad's, we had to change the business plan model, and we couldn't have the rented property under TRL. We had to set up a separate company to ensure the operational management of that. That's technically why you've got two companies. But as Roger said, unfortunately, we are spread fairly thin, and there's a lots of administration and governance that has to go on between the two companies, which I manage, and obviously I manage the contract with HERA, who do oversee all those operational elements, just as housing management do in the council.
Well done. Yep. Thank you for that. And Roger, thank you for pointing out one of the greatest flaws of being hybrid, which is you can't see the face of the people to see whether you are satisfied with an answer. That'd certainly be useful when I ask for more and more of these in person where possible. So with that, is there any further questions or statements in regards to the paper? If not, go back to page 15, which is one recommendation 1.1. The contents of the report are noted. Are they duly noted? Excellent. Thank you. So before we move on to the next item, Councillor Kent, Councillor Worrell, you'll be leaving. And just for the tape, so everybody knows you're not just absconding, it's because you're unable to sit on the interview panels and excuse yourself last time as well, which is just so people don't wonder why you've, because obviously thousands of people are watching this right now, because there's nothing else happening in the whole of this country at all. We're watching this instead.
Watching this one. Can I
Councillor Coxwell.
Before Roger goes, and thank you so much for making that document. I think it was very helpful to come once every 6 months here. I know it was a suggestion, but I think it's an interesting way, because normally it's down to us as a council to do this, and thank you for coming tonight. That's much appreciated, to actually report back every 6 months.
And hopefully next time in person.
Absolutely, I'll be there next time, definitely.
Thank you both, and I'll call you for a short recess to allow Councillor Worrell and Kent to leave. Thank you.
And we'll leave now as well, Leader, so farewell to everyone. Good to see you.
My apologies, please.